All right, what's up, everyone? Baker Fairburn Hockey Show After Dark edition is live. July 1st. Happy July. I am your host on the left, the schlub, Chris Baker. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects. On the right-hand side, long day for our Sabres writer over at The Athletic, Matthew Fairburn. Matthew, welcome to the fracas. I'm sure... Thank you for staying up this late, by the way. Long day. I believe you just filed your last entry of the day for The Athletic and wanted to get together real quick here. We've been seeing a lot of each other here on this screen. But day one of NHL free agency open. Sabres made some moves today. Might as well just jump right into it. I don't think, by the way, I'm going to say it now, and I say it every week, but I don't think we're going to go for an hour and 20 minutes tonight. I think this will be a little bit more of a quick hit podcast for those listening audio, maybe in the morning. We thank you for that, by the way. It's about 10:15 Eastern time. And both of these adults here on this YouTube stream are pretty tired. But as people trickle in, if you could please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show goes live. You can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could please leave a 5-star review. Matthew, it's going to pass the puck over to you and get your opening thoughts on what day one of free agency brought to the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, bought is really the right word, isn't it, for
Yeah,
the
I think
Sabres
so.
at this
I think
point?
so.
I mean, they had to do more, right? After the weekend they had at the NHL draft. That was sort of where we left things on Saturday night when we spoke. And they took a step today. I don't know if they took every necessary step, but they took some necessary steps. Jason Zucker was the big ticket item today, and that sentence alone might have some people a little bit upset, right? You know, Jason Zucker's 32 years old, had 32 points last season, I believe, 48 the season before. I think his best hockey is probably behind him, but the Sabres view him as a player who can move up and down the lineup, potentially as high as playing with your top guys. That's, we'll see. I don't know if that's the big ticket signing people were hoping for. Certainly, I can't imagine too many people were hoping for that to be the biggest move of the offseason. But so far, that is. They also have remade their fourth line entirely. That started with Beck Malenstein over the weekend. They go out today and they get Sam Lafferty, who can play center. He's taken a lot of faceoffs in the last few seasons. Over 300 last year. 2 years ago, he was over 400 faceoffs, was up over 50% on his draws. And they got Nicholas Abu Kabel. That's gonna take me a little while. It's a mouthful after a long day, after a red eye on Saturday night. I think I'm still catching up on that one. And if my voice reflects that, I apologize. But that fourth line right there alone, each one of those guys would have been the top 3 Sabres forwards in hits last season. 222 for Malenstein, up over 100, well over 100 for both of the others. So we talked a lot about competitiveness, physicality, hitting, forechecking, all these things. Those 3
throw
players
block
all bring
shots into that, by the way. Throw block shots into that.
Those guys eat pucks.
And Lafferty. Yeah.
Yeah, those guys absolutely eat pucks. They play defense. They are, to put a term on it, difficult to play against. They make the Sabres harder to play against. I don't know if it was Lindy Ruff or what, but all of a sudden, Kevyn Adams is taking serious action to make this team tougher in a lot of ways, something that he essentially ignored for his first 4 years as general manager. He is now trying to correct in one fell swoop in the span of 3 days. Even Zucker, I think, falls into that category. A couple of years ago, he had 170-something hits. He can play sort of a physical game if he's on that type of line. So absolutely, I think they accomplished the goal, of being more abrasive, whatever description you want to use. They got more toughness. They became a tougher team today. And that is a step. That is a step. What we'll get into once we break down these players and everything else is that enough? Did they do enough on the rest of the roster? They also signed Dennis Gilbert, local
Yep.
kid, who brings some of that on defense too. So it gives you another option on defense and somebody who can, I think, play a competitive and tough game. Hasn't really been a full-time NHLer yet in his career, but has some of that to his game. So I think the big question a lot of people will have is, did they do enough? Is there more coming? Because if there's not, they're banking on a lot of big question marks, I think, heading into next season.
Yeah, I think that well, first of all, these moves were the moves that should have been made a year ago.
Yes.
These types of moves, maybe even some of these players were available a year ago. And that was my first thought when looking at what they did. Overall, I think I totally understand this. He told us that he was going to make these types of moves, and I'm glad to at least see him do what he said he was going to do. To me, these are all moves for the bottom six. I understand that they're saying so, and Zucker he could play up if you need him to, but man, if you're going out there opening night and that's like, I don't know if that's the right situation. If you go in there opening night and he's on like your second line, can he
It's him or
play there?
Benson, right? It's him or Benson or Jordan
Yeah.
Greenway as the roster stands right now.
Yeah, it's Benson. I mean, so we saw some good things at the end of the last season. What was it? It was Benson, Cousins, Quinn, right? I think that's how they ended. And I see no reason as of now to kind of bust that up, see what you can get. Manage the minutes better out of the gate on a Jason Zucker, unless he comes in, maybe he plays inspired hockey. But I mean, you got a nice veteran two-way leadership there with Zucker. I don't mind the signing. $5 million is kind of what he's been making past couple of seasons, past couple of contracts, I believe. I didn't dive into it, but I want to say he was like what 5.3, 5.5, somewhere around there. Past couple of contracts that he had 5.2 or 5.3 sounds right.
Yeah, he was a little over 5. This is because I saw the sticker price at first and thought, boy, that's a lot of money. And then I looked at his other contracts and thought, all right, he's been in that range. But I will say how the rest of the league views that range. He got traded for a 6th-round pick at the deadline. Last season, he was a 1-year Arizona Coyotes cap floor signing. Got traded at the deadline for a 6th-round pick. Did not have a very good year, and his number didn't come down that much, which tells me the Buffalo bonus came into play here, I think.
Oh, his agent
to talk him
juiced.
into this.
Yeah, there was some juice on that for sure to get him here. No doubt about it. But it wasn't that egregious overpay that maybe we thought that they were going to have to do coming into the signing season, right? The moves for me, I mean, Zucker, great, fine. I can deal with it. The moves for me really was Sam Lafferty and Obey-Kubel. If you go back, you got grit, you got grime, you got pace with those guys, some tenacity. That's why I was saying, like, when you looked at everything that you and I talked about, whether we were getting together after games or coming in, between game days or whatever, we were just talking about not being ready to play the compete level, the compete. They corrected that today. So for that, I'm excited to see. Lafferty's always been a player that I love. He's coming in off his best statistical season as an NHLer. And what I like is, they got some, the average age of the team has gone up, and you don't just do it for a number, right? But I think you got 32-year-old Jason Zucker, Lafferty's 29, Obey-Kubel's 28. And these guys can move quick and play hard. And hopefully these are the types of guys that lead by example when they get their shifts and they force some accountability, because these are guys that are going to get ice time from Lindy Ruff if they're doing their jobs and the others aren't. That's how Lindy coaches. And so I don't know. I was pleased to at least see Kevin do what he said he was going to do. It's kind of where I'm at right now. For a few hours, the paint's still kind of wet on these signings. But no, I'm with you. By the way, did he do enough? Are there trades to be made? Yes, there are. At least conceptually. Is there a trade partner? I don't know. But now that dust has settled on the guys that have been slotted, if there were trades that were being held up because of free agency, that excuse is now gone. The big guys are gone. I think Adam Henrique probably just signed. He was the other guy that I think Sabres fans might have been looking at. But yeah, I don't know. I like Lafferty, though. I really, really like that signing. And if you go Lafferty down the middle with Malenstein, Obeku Bell, it's pretty formidable fourth line. And by the way, Lafferty could play up if you need him to on the third.
That's a part that I think is interesting because the two big remaining needs that they have right now are a top six forward, theoretically, right? If we're sketching out ideal offseason beforehand, you'd like to see a top six forward. I don't think Zucker is that. Maybe they think he is. The other thing is a third center, right? And right now, it looks like they think Peyton Krebs might be that guy. And we'll get into Kevin Adams' press conference because there were some interesting comments that might speak to how this team's being built. But one thing he said about Krebs, he said, something along the lines of, we all know, what he can do offensively. And I thought he had 4 goals last year.
If you were watching him play Winnipeg of the WHL, you know what he could do.
We know what he could do offensively in junior. A lot of guys can do stuff offensively in junior.
Steve Ott scored like 48 goals
right.
in the
so
OHL 1 year.
We don't know what he can do offensively, I think is part of the problem. And banking on a lot of internal growth is a challenge for me to picture them closing that gap to where they need to be, right? These are the signings you make to reinforce a highly skilled team that was already maybe in the playoffs. I think they maybe need more punch at the top than he is giving them credit for. Now, could this team, as constructed, with some bounce back years and a really strong coaching performance from Lindy Ruff, get the Sabres into the playoffs? Maybe. But it just feels like there's a little bit more there that could get done. And I say that because they still have money. They're still at about $19 million in cap space before signing their RFAs. So if you have Luukkonen, Jokiharju, Krebs, and Malenstein at, what, 11 million maybe total.
Yeah.
That still gives you $8 million. You saved $7.5 million on this year's cap by getting rid of Jeff Skinner. Why did you do that unless you're going to spend that money? And today, Kevin Adams said he doesn't necessarily feel like he needs to go spend to the cap.
Yeah.
So if you didn't feel that way, because when he talks about the cap, he always brings up the future contracts, right? When Peterka and Quinn get their new deals, those are going to be big cap numbers. Those don't impact your cap right now. You've got this space now. You know what does impact your cap in the future? Jeff Skinner's buyout.
Mm-hmm.
It gets worse as it goes along. Now is the time to use the money if you're going to buy him out. So I do think there's an element of addition by subtraction there. I get that. But you've got to replace the offense somehow. In a down year, he had 24 goals. That's a good year for Jason Zucker. So, where's the rest of the plan? Is there a trade to be made? Is there a young player that they think is ready? Is Yuri Kulik ready to burst onto the scene? I don't know, but I think that's the part of it that fans should justifiably have some hesitation about. But that is to take nothing away from every player they signed, including Zucker, even at $5 million, because I don't particularly care about the Sabres overpaying on short-term deals with the cap situation they're in. They should do more of it. They should have done more of it the last 2 years. You have all this space, use it. Instead of bringing back Tyson Joe, Zemgus Girgensons, Kyle Okposo, all these players that, came up short. So I think the risk they run, though, is 2 years ago, you were one of the best offensive teams in hockey. Last year, you were 23rd in goals scored. You got excellent goaltending, like some of the best in the NHL. And if that goes back at all, you need the rest of it to pick up. You need to be much better defensively. You need to score more. And if you think that Lindy Ruff is the magic wand that will get all of these guys, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, Jack Quinn, Dylan Cousins, JJ Peterka, to their highest potential on offense, I think you're making a little bit of a gamble.
Let's take it back to Krebs real quick. He's kind of being put on watch right now with Lafferty. I think that you would ideally have Lafferty just have this 3-man unit with him and Obey-Kubel and Malensteins go out there and just hit, play hard. You know what I mean? Go out there, empty the tank for 40 seconds, get the hell off the ice, take a breather, and get back out there. Ideally, Krebs, though, I think is on watch unless there's another move to make, right? Like that's kind of what we're saying. Lafferty I don't know if you have seen enough of the player. The vibe that I get, we talked about Scott Lawton a lot. He's kind of like that poor man Scott Lawton. But and you can play him on your third line. That's what I'm saying. Krebs isn't going to fit down there though between Malenstein and Obey-Kubel. So
I don't think so.
At least I don't see it, right? But so to shift now forward, I know the fans won't be happy if Kevin's done. I don't think he's done. And I think there's still names. This is why I think the balance of this week is going to be really interesting because there were names out there. Some you may like, some you might not like. I don't know. There's one that I'm not like crazy about, but I even just as like I was jotting it down on our notes, I got a text about it. And I'll just read you the text. It's from a friend. It's not an insider. But I'm just going to feed this to you. I won't read the text, but it's about Trevor Zegras. I'm not crazy about Trevor Zegras in Buffalo, but the longer that this goes on, is that a move that you think Kevin Adams has to make?
Has to make? No, but should consider. I think this is a great time to buy Trevor Zegras.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's an awesome time to buy that player because 12 months ago, the cost would have been much higher. I think he's got, is it a great contract? No, but it's not bad. Gives you team flexibility. I think he's 5.75 for 2 more, maybe. It was a bridge deal that he signed. So he's got a reasonable number. You're not locked into this contract that's impossible to move. And when you have insulated your lineup the way that they have with these tougher players,
makes more sense now to go and think about it, right?
I think so. He can play center and wing. So it gives you the option. That was something Kevin Adams mentioned today is just having more options for Lindy Ruff, right? He can do different things with the lines. And somebody like Zegras, I think, gives you that flexibility. It gives you some insurance if some of these other guys don't bounce back. And, would Trevor Zegras love coming to Buffalo? Maybe not, but too bad. He doesn't have no trade. He hasn't earned that yet in his career, and he isn't on some crazy contract that's unmovable.
I mean,
he is, from New York State, right? Somewhere downstate.
Yeah. He's one of those downstate hot dogs.
So I don't mind the idea. The other thing, getting to talk to a lot of people over the weekend about this team and talking to some of our other writers at The Athletic. I was talking to Julian McKenzie, our Flames writer, about how much sense the Flames and Sabres make as trade partners if the Flames keep, tearing that thing down. And he was 100% in agreement because he keeps talking about how they need more players that are like 18 to 23, 18 to 24 in that age group, young offensive players.
And I know a team that's got a shit ton of them.
The Sabres have too many of them, and he didn't seem to think that the idea of a Blake Coleman trade was super far-fetched. So, we know he's a favorite of the Baker Fairburn hockey show here, but, they got Nazem Kadri. They've got some players that could be reasonably attractive. I know they got rid of Mangiapane already, but it feels like there should still be some trades out there to be made. They only really need at this point one, maybe two. Probably just one
Just
if it's for
one.
the right player, because then
Just
you can push
right.
other guys down the lineup, right?
Yeah, let's
And
not get crazy. That's no, no, you know what I'm saying though. No, I'm with you 100%. It's I'm not optimistic just because I still don't understand where Buffalo fits into this market right now. The trade market. I think he's desperate. I do believe that he's trying. I believe he's genuine, Kevin, when he says that he's trying to have those conversations and make things happen. So it doesn't, and the fact that it hasn't yet, like in this past week, doesn't leave me with much optimism, but I am expecting at the same time. I just think that I don't know if it's Zegras or I tell you what, Calgary, the script has definitely changed there. You know what I mean? Some of
it
those guys
has.
that signed there, I think it's changed fast. You know, Coleman maybe a couple weeks ago wanted to be there. Maybe he wants to be out. Maybe, and he had to submit I think a trade list today, right? Or maybe he can do it when asked. I don't know how it works with his contract, but um, kind of interesting, man. Yeah, it's. I think that the next couple of days, I wasn't expect. I think what happened today from free agents coming in were what we expected, but he can't be done. Can't be done. But wrapping up on the free agents. So we also brought Jacob Bryson back to town here in Buffalo. So he's staying 1 year, 900K. I don't know if you said that. The Gilbert and Bryson contract. So Bryson is 900K, Gilbert 825. The full contract details aren't available yet. You have to think there's like a minor league salary baked in there. A few $100,000 for both those guys. I'd be kind of curious to find out. You're not paying Dennis Gilbert 825,000 to play in Rochester.
No,
You
I
know,
wouldn't think so.
unless you're sending, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Like I said, things can change real quick if he makes a move that Henry Yoki is included. But, one other thing too, Kevin's talked a lot about not blocking the paths for his young prospects. As it stands right now, I think it could be Kulik just because he's got that full season. Let's call it a season and a third, almost a season and a half playing center primarily. We talked about it last episode that you and I got together, and I think that path is still there for him as it presently stands to come in and maybe do something, especially with the power play spice that he can have. They give him a little bit of look there and set him
I
up on
think
his side.
too, um, Peyton Krebs' contract will probably tell us something in that regard, right? Because if they, you know, just intend to pay him his qualifying offer, take it or leave it situation, then you know that creates that competition. I think right there, it's making him earn it. If they pay him, closer to $2 million, that makes me think that he's got a role. So
And they're not right. They can't. I don't think they can do that.
I
What
can't think
So
they
wait,
would
yeah.
go that high, but the number they give him, I guess, will tell me something about how up for grabs his job is. And it should be up for grabs. He should have to earn it. That should have to be the point across the board. But that's where maybe somebody like Savoy could come in and steal a spot on the wing. And if he's stealing a spot on the wing, you kind of want him high in your lineup. So I'm kind of curious to get your take on this. A lot of these guys aren't at development camp. This is a little bit of a segue, but
Yeah.
relevant to what we're talking about because one of these guys could get a job. A ton of them aren't at development camp. Kulik, Roseanne, Savoy, Kisakov,
Yeah.
Novikov, Wahlberg, Osland. There's probably a
Viljami
few others.
Marjala is not there also, who had a great year in Finland. He's not on the camp roster. Not
It's a
signed,
long
but
list.
yeah.
It might be like 10 guys. There might be a couple
Yeah.
that I didn't even mention. And Savoy is not there. I'm a little curious about it. Some of them, it's because they went deep. Savoy and Komarov played in the Memorial Cup. They played a lot of hockey, so they're getting kind
Yeah.
of a breather. Rochester didn't go that deep in the playoffs this year. So
Mm-mm.
I don't know. Have they just seen enough development camp for these guys? You know, Kevin Adams, the explanation he gave was that they didn't want to interrupt their summer training. But especially a guy like Kisakov, I would think like this is part of your summer training.
Well,
You
here's
want
the
to
thing,
check
though.
in on
Okay,
his summer training.
they're not. I don't know. I mean, it's a different thought process than what it used to be. You know, development camp 5, 8 years ago, they put a lot of emphasis on getting the guys in. It was almost like an orientation. Um, I don't know. Like they always talked about you wanted like some of those older prospects to be there to like embrace the leadership part of it and leading that new young group of players and prospects. They've totally shifted away from that. It's clear. Um, I don't know how I feel about this yet, honestly, but development camp to me is just kind of bogus anyways.
That's
On the
kind of where
ice.
I'm at, right? Like
On the ice.
I'm
Okay, so the important stuff is off the ice. Meeting with the nutritionist, the strength training, getting your it's like when they brought Scott Ratzlaff in at the end of the year into Rochester. It was almost just to get him FaceTime with Seamus and the player development staff just to chart out what these weeks and months were going to look like from his training. They do that a lot. They didn't bring Ratzlaff into play. Okay. They brought him here to kind of meet with them. And so and that's kind of telling you, I think that they're okay with this. Yeah. I think that I think that that's right. They're saying they don't want to interrupt what's going on, but at the same time, check in with them for 3 days, bring them in, stay close
I
to your
don't see how it
assets.
hurts. I don't
Yeah.
see how it
It's
hurts
only, oh, it's not
to
even a full week. So, but well, I don't know.
that's what I go back and
Is it a
forth because
money
like
thing?
you
They don't
said,
want to spend like for 10 seriously.
well, they have a pretty big roster. So
I'm
this
being I'm being
all
a
right,
wise ass a little bit, but I
a
don't know.
little,
Is it
but
relevant?
I
Yeah.
I'm I was just and there wasn't a ton of time to get into it in the press conference today, and Kevin seemed to only know the specifics on a few guys, but gave that broad answer that didn't want to interrupt the training. But like a guy like Kisakov, to me, the whole thing with him is like he needs to get stronger. So wouldn't you want him checking in? How's he
Mhm.
doing? Maybe he's back in Russia and it's too complicated, but he's been here every year. I don't know. It's a little weird to me because you if you so the theme of this offseason so far has been, it's tough to recruit guys to Buffalo. No trade clauses, right? All these things. Puts a huge emphasis on not only the draft, but the develop part of the draft and develop philosophy. So this is part of developing these players. Now, are they going to get so much better in the next 3 days? Probably not. But the other piece to this that I do wonder, this is maybe a stretch trying to connect too many dots, but are they thinking about trading one of these guys? Did they not want to trade to go down? But then why is it 10 or 11?
I doubt
And
that. I doubt that. Okay. I do doubt that. But here's the other thing, though. I want to throw this out there again, like the on ice stuff in development camp. Who cares? Maybe they saw these, and player development has changed. They see these players so much during the season. It's a little different the past decade than it used to be. But the biggest takeaway that I always had from development camp was like the friendships and the relationships and kind of those players coming together. Like, you know what I mean? Um, you lose a little bit of that when you don't have some of those core guys here. Anton Wahlberg is still 18. He was drafted a year ago. I understand he's played, you had a full year of professional hockey. I get it. Maybe this is a sign that he's, as a young human being, is going to be leaving home for the first time full time in the fall. And they don't want to interrupt that also. I don't know. But he's also a professional hockey player. He's getting paid. This is his job. So is it like this country club atmosphere? Like, has any of these guys really, like Savoy played deep? But to your point about some of the guys that were in Rochester, Did they earn
the
the
Memorial
summer off?
Cup.
Are they teachers?
The Memorial Cup also ended over a month ago, right? It was Memorial Day weekend, was it not?
Went into June, yeah,
Yeah.
close
So
to a month. Yeah.
I mean, the Amherst were out of the playoffs. What, 6 weeks ago?
Mhm.
I
It's
guess to me,
peculiar. It's
it's
peculiar,
it's a
Matthew.
little
It is,
peculiar.
but
It's different. It's to me, what's the point of development camp if you don't want all your top guys at development
I
camp?
want as many. I want guys that actually want to be there.
Right.
Also, though, like there's
Well,
guys like some of them you can rationalize. Some of them are kind of sketchy.
and doesn't it only help your draft picks to see, what they're up against,
Well,
to
not
go
only
up
that, but
against
you
your
want
rookie week?
you want the guys that have been there a few years leading the drills, showing the younger guys the way. Some of the 18-year-old guys coming in, they're seeing this. They're putting on an NHL jersey, the crest, anyways, for the first time. They're all, some of them are deer in headlights. I mean, you've seen it, like with a Jake Richard. The first year, he comes back the second year. They know what to expect. They're a little more seasoned. There's countless examples of those guys, and they lose. And I bet you having some of those older guys for Jake Richard's first year helped him
He's here, so
in
he's
that
that
second
guy
one.
now. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, and I thought that Kevin Adams' answer to development camp missed the mark a little bit because he ended it by saying, one of the things that stood out to him is how many junior Sabres were there. And and, and I get it. Like, it's a cool thing to have the local guys there, but from a messaging standpoint, that I think misses the mark. I don't think you
Mhm.
want to bring up the junior Sabres ever if you're Kevin Adams, because people already do not have a good association with Kevin Adams and the junior Sabres, right? And they certainly don't want to hear that, that might play into decisions, right? That, you know, like they drafted Gavin McCarthy last year, which I think is a fine pick, but, he grew up as Kevin Adams' neighbor. They signed Dennis Gilbert today. Again, I think it's a fine signing, but, you know, if you were a team that had won over and over again, that would be one thing. I just don't think it's necessary to bring it up, right? I just think it missed the mark for me. But,
No.
um, and again,
Like
it's
let
nothing
people
against.
write the stories if they want to write the stories. Let Hoppy write a junior Sabre story. If Matthew Fairburn wants to write one for the Athletic, go ahead. Right? Let the people. Yeah, I'm with you. Actually,
Like,
I'm with you on that.
if if somebody asks about a specific guy, by all means, but to a broad strokes question about development camp and why certain guys aren't here, to say that was one of the first things that stood out to you, how cool that was, and what a great job they've done building the junior Sabres. I don't know. Not to mention that, there's a whole separate conversation to be had about, Buffalo hockey, and maybe this is an off-season podcast for us at some point
Yeah.
about how much talent comes out of this area to begin with these days compared to how much used to. Maybe what role the NHL team being a train wreck has played into that, but I don't know. It just felt unnecessary to me. Yeah, a complete side note, but the development camp is definitely not front and center this year. But by not having all those guys here, it's even more not front and center. And you almost should want it to be with the main way you're trying to build this team. So it's hard to invest energy into development camp if you're telling your top prospects to not do it.
I was also not down there today. They also told me I didn't need to be there. Clean
You're
my
seasoned.
garage.
You've been to too many of these. You're developed.
I'll be down there. I'll get down there. But all right, we're half hour in. Just to kind of put a bow on free agency, and then we get into the chat. How you feeling? You feeling good, man? Feeling all right? You
We're
hanging in
rolling.
there? All right, good. Jeff Skinner. So let's talk about who left the organization. Skinner got a 1-year deal in Edmonton for $3 million. Zemgus Girgenssen's 3-year deal in Tampa for $850K per year. Tyson Jost and Eric Robinson go out to Carolina, and Eric Comrie going to Winnipeg to be, I guess, the third goalie. Some of the other deletions from the Sabres today, Jeremy Davies and Joseph Ciccone are out. Davies to the Ottawa organization, I think, and former junior Sabre Joseph Ciccone going to Minnesota's organization. Then incoming for the Amherst, Felix Sandstrom, Swedish goaltender coming out of the Philly system. Jack Rathbone, good player, originally drafted by the Canucks. Josh Dunn out of Clarkson. I forget where he was last year. Then Brett Murray and Mason Jobs also coming back. So just some housekeeping there. Any thoughts on Skinner or
Brandon Byro.
Girgensons?
Good shout out here by David Dietz in the chat. Brandon Byro off to
Viral,
Seattle.
good. Yep, I didn't catch that earlier.
Yeah, a lot happened at once today, huh? It's
Yeah.
just a lot of action. But
I'd like to congratulate the Edmonton Oilers on their Stanley Cup. That's going to be
it's going to
coming
be
next
tough.
year.
It's a 3-horse race between the Avs with Casey Middlestat, the Oilers with Jeff Skinner, and a late addition, the Lightning entering the fray by signing Zemgus. You know, seeing how it helped. I think Skinner's. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, I understood the line of thinking in getting rid of him, but if you're sitting there with $8 or $9 million on your cap on opening night, and Skinner's skating next to McDavid or Drysdale, you're going to have a hard time convincing people that you couldn't find a spot for him in your top 6 when a team that was a win away from winning the Stanley Cup basically came out and said right away, that he's going to fit in good in our top 6. So different makeup, different team. When you have McDavid and Drysdale, you got to do some different things, but that is that's going to be an interesting one to follow, frankly, because Skinner was such a lightning rod for debate here for so many years, and obviously his contract was such a problem. But if you don't use the money, you're going to open yourself up to a lot of criticism, I think, on that one. And my impression of the move was that you're going to do it for a purpose, and maybe they still will. But right now, if you don't, the only purpose it served was saving the owner money. As things stand at the moment.
I brought that up a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, just thinking I was cautious about saying it, but it's kind of what it feels like the real dollars.
The real dollars is only, what, 2/3, right?
Yeah.
So you save the owner money, but you don't. If you don't spend the money, the major cap benefit was this season. It's still a small benefit next season and a smaller benefit after that, and then it's actively a penalty.
If they don't spend the money, then yeah, what this move on Skinner was about.
Right, your actions. You're never going to hear Kevin Adams stand up there and say something like that. Never.
Of course not. Yeah, of course not.
Your actions tell you what this is. So to stand up there and say you don't feel like you need to spend to the cap, but to then say the Skinner buyout was about cap stuff doesn't add up unless you spend the money. And there's not much to spend it on anymore, by the way.
No. So I'm saying, that's where you start thinking about, is it Zegras? Is it one of these guys? Is that the way that you're going to spend money? All right. On that note, let's hit the chat. I'm sure everyone's very excited. Actually, I think there is some excitement in the chat. We're seeing a little bit of this. I started a couple. I don't know if you threw any in there, but Hans says great additions to the bottom 6 today. Now let's package picks and prospects for a top 6 center. Krebs doesn't belong on the third line, and Cousins and Zucker could ignite some offense, maybe with Savoy. I'm so curious to see the line combinations, deeper into the preseason schedule that Lindy puts together. You always have the goofy line combinations that don't make any sense in the first couple of preseason games, but as they start to pare things down, you'll start to get an idea of some of these, centers and wing pairs that Lindy wants to use. I don't know. I mean, I agree on the Krebs thought. That's why I sit there and say Lafferty could be the guy that maybe pushes Krebs a little bit. Lafferty can play, man. I think he can play. Cousins and Zucker. Yeah, I mean, let's see. I'm curious to see what Zucker has in the tank, you know?
The other thing is
But
Beck Mallenstein played a little bit of center last year. I think he took like 50-something faceoffs. So
yeah.
if things got dire and Krebs wasn't working out as a third line center, you could move Lafferty up and maybe try to push Mallenstein over. Kevin also brought up the possibility of Krebs playing wing
Mhm.
down the line. So they haven't closed the door on that either. So maybe the trade that they could make is for another center that
Mhm.
makes Krebs have to earn his keep elsewhere. Just should have some guys earning it a little bit more. And nobody in the top 6 at the moment is going to have to earn anything except maybe Benson has to hold off Zucker for his job.
Yeah, it's kind of Eric Lamoureux's chat here. Kevin Adams said he was happy with the current roster. Who's in the top 6, Zucker or Benson? How confident are you with Krebs' 3C? There's a lot of Krebs 3C talk in the chat tonight. We're not going to solve it tonight. I think we're all kind of questioning that. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe Krebs, he said the right things on his way out at the end of the season. Maybe he comes back. We've seen young guys add 10, 11 pounds of mass, and it makes a difference on the ice. Maybe Krebs is the next guy that does that. I mean, it's almost like we could talk about it till we're blue in the face for the next couple of months, but we just need to see what happens in September, October, see what Krebs looks like, and maybe a light bulb goes on. To answer the question about the top 6, though, I'm keeping Benson there on that line, man. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think he's
As
got the most pop, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think you could put Zucker with Cousins. I think that could work. I think you could put him. I think the goal is to put Paterka on the first line. I don't think they're going to move off of that. Lindy Ruff has been pumping his tires pretty good, and he had a good year last year and seemed like it worked out okay. So I don't know.
I
Like
mean,
you, I'm curious to see.
pushing Skinner out pretty much tells you that, right?
Right. So, because that's the spot that they say wasn't open, right? Because if
Mhm.
Skinner's not on your top line, he can't be on your team, basically, was how
Yeah.
they were looking at it. Not totally unfair, by the way, but again, got to spend the money. There's a lot that's going to come down to exactly what you just talked about with Krebs. Like, let's see how Krebs shows up in September. Let's see how Savoy and Kulik show up in September. Let's see how Roseanne shows up in September. I don't think there's a spot for Roseanne anymore necessarily, but let's see how the other two show up. But it's just a big roll of the dice for some key questions, right? That will help create more offense for your team that isn't necessarily there right now on July 1st, but I guess we'll see.
I think we'll see these types of comments the next couple of days until we see a trade from Kevin Adams. So Jeff Luce says, I would offer Greenway and Roseanne for Konechny if it's a sign and trade. Probably takes a little more. I would think. But
I think it's going to take a decent amount more to get Konechny.
yeah, on the Roseanne thought though, I think we're going to see him be a popular sweetener in a lot of trade proposals from Sabres fans the next couple of days.
Well, the same way
Yeah, I don't know,
Krebs
man.
and Jokiharju are, right? But you got to
Yeah, but
remember that's not what teams want. If they're looking at
no,
your
we always say
prospect
it.
pool, right?
Yeah,
They want the top guys.
yeah. And I'm not saying Jeff Luce was doing that, but you see that all the time, right? It's like 3 bites of cheeseburger for a nice ribeye, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's like it
Right.
doesn't always work out that way. But so yeah, but it's always yeah. I mean, we saw what was it? It was Weber and every like Mike Weber was in every trade proposal for like 3 years in Buffalo about a decade ago. I don't know if you see anything else. We're 45 minutes in, Matthew, and I don't want to keep you very long. You had a very long day. If you see anything else in the chat, feel free to roll with it. Anything that gets you excited. other than that, we can start to wind this bad boy down and do our first. I don't think we've ever done an episode under an hour. Or
You
we
know
can
what?
just keep
I
going through the
think we
chat and keep the
did.
streak alive, baby.
I feel like we did because we did a lot of these before games where we would have to squeeze it in, and the game, would kind of dictate. One other thing I want to touch on that I'm curious about is Kevin Adams again taking a couple of not so veiled shots at Don Granato. And today it was about they're going to be faster and more direct. The play style is going to, it's not just that these guys are going to bounce back, they're going to bounce back because of coaching. He mentioned something about predictability. He mentioned accountability again. All these things where, like, Lindy Ruff was the big offseason acquisition, almost in his mind. And I think Lindy Ruff had a big hand in pushing for some of these moves and making some of these additions. But it just seems like a lot being heaped on that particular change, as if that was the problem with the team last year. It was one of them, but
I'm fairly certain Don Granato was telling Kevin a year ago what he needed to add, the pieces that he needed to have to better coach the team and better manage the team.
I think
But Lindy
very
just has
much
that
so.
much more credibility with Kevin than Don did. Then why was Don your coach?
Yeah, I just, it's a drastic turn, right? Because these moves should have been made a year ago. And
100%, man.
you can bet that Don Granato was sitting there when Jack Quinn called him to tell him about his Achilles injury, thinking, boy, my forward group needs a little bit more here. Because if another inevitable injury happens, we're in trouble. And they added nobody, not even on, tryout deals or anything. No veterans. No effort was made, right? Like Eric Johnson, Connor Clifton, call it a day. Like, so that it it sits a little weird with me. And I think everybody who listens to this show knows where we stood on the coaching situation, right? But part of what we were talking about was that the team needed to be woken up. The team needed, kind of some sort of spark. And it came late. And these moves come late. And so the ability to recognize and think ahead and do things like that seems to be lacking. So the plan is shifting, right? For a while, Kevin Adams was questioning, do they need to be tougher to play against? Do they need more grit? Do they need more toughness? He was asking Kyle Okposo about it a couple years ago at the trade deadline. That's why they went out and they got Jordan Greenway.
Yeah.
And so now he makes this big push for this. Well, it seems like almost every time he speaks now, there's these little subtle shots at the coaching from last year. And a great point here by Jim Campbell. Like, why did he give the 2-year extension then with 2 full years to go on his original contract? This
It's a
was the
great
guy
question in retrospect.
he hired him, right? And it took him all this time to recognize all these things. He told me at the trade deadline he loved how the team was preparing. He loved how the coaching staff was preparing. Also, the only new coach is Lindy Ruff. The rest of the coaching staff is intact. So now it's like, Seth Appert's up, but he's within the organization. So I just, I don't know. It's weird to me that every time, almost unprompted, every time he speaks, it seems like there's something that you can decode as a little disrespectful towards Don Granato when
Yeah.
it's okay to fire him. I understand why he got fired. That's the business. I don't. And as we said many times on this show, it was, a move that was necessary. But I said when they fired him and when they hired Lindy Ruff and the way the players were talking, if they think it's a magic wand, that's going to be a problem. That they can just press the coach button, they can just press the accountability button, and everything will be fixed. That's not really how this works, and it feels like Kevin Adams thinks that move was the biggest, most important move of the offseason. We'll see. Maybe there's a bigger one coming, but the way he speaks, he brings that up almost every time.
Trying to say this the right way, and I don't know if I I'm baking this out on the fly, but that's a lot to put on Lindy because it's like he is the marquee acquisition as it presently stands, right? And he didn't bring any of his own guys in with him. It blows my mind. Like for him to be the marquee acquisition, don't you think that he would have a little more backup and a little more help to run his system? And there's not one guy that Lindy brought in, unless I'm missing something.
That part is really surprising to me.
It blows my mind.
And it's nothing against Seth Appert at all. Maybe a little bit against the other guys, but again, it's like isolating Don Granato as the sole problem, despite the fact that a year earlier he coached the team to 91 points, despite having every year that they had Don Granato as their coach, they were in the bottom 5 in the league in payroll. They were the youngest team in the league, I think, every year that he coached them. And so to isolate that as the variable when Kevin Adams is the one who built the team, right? Kevin Adams is the one who, via trade or free agency, really hasn't until today, and even maybe including today, if you ask some people, hasn't made like substantial addition to the roster. So to think the coach, it feels almost like, I don't know the right word that I'm looking for, but it feels like that is trying to hide all the other problems, right? Like you're almost placing blame on Don Granato for what went wrong last year and not looking in the mirror to say, where did I go wrong building this team? Where have I forecasted wrong? Where have, which contracts maybe were premature? Or that's just saying, because to your point, the way the coaching staff is built suggests that the problem was Don Granato and the video coach, apparently. Um, Matt Ellis is moving upstairs, so but did Lindy Ruff, why didn't he get to bring in any of his own guys? I don't know.
It's really peculiar if he is the marquee. Like I said, I'm not going to repeat that, but that was kind of where I was going with that. And on the Granato thing too. I mean, I'm not going to beat the dead horse. Don's been, unemployed for a couple months now, it seems, but it was pretty clear to us in like January, like why did he wait so long if there were all these problems?
Well, that
He
too,
pissed
right
he
now in
pissed that season
hindsight.
away, like because it tells me that you know what, Kevin feels really good about his job security.
Yeah.
When reality, he should feel very like urgent, like act with a little more urgency, including firing the coach when things were going off the rails in the winter. And even now, like when he speaks, I'll just ask you this because we're 53 minutes in, and I'm at the point now where I want to keep you for the full hour, just to keep the streak alive. Do you get the sense when Kevin's talking to the media that he's comfortable?
I
Like we
do
talked about it,
actually.
like
So
we talked about stress, right? We talked about like annoyed and stress from draft week and free agency week coming up, but he said a couple things today that made me feel like maybe he's comfortable, like
yeah,
but I'm not there. Yeah.
the stress to me and the always felt more like frustration. Like he couldn't get done what he wanted to get done because other GMs weren't meeting his asking prices or whatever else. I have wondered that a lot, because you get the outside view of this team from talking to other people, and people say, man, is he going to get, 5 full years with no playoffs? And I can't rule that out. I can't. And maybe there is a level of comfort there, between Terry Pagula and Kevin Adams. So I don't know. But to me, the way he has acted the last few years speaks to somebody who feels pretty comfortable in his job security, because he, even today, didn't really take the big swing. And maybe he tried. I don't know. But he
Part of the
seemed pretty.
job is not spending money just to spend money at the same time. Okay. I'm not
That's
going to make
true.
excuses for Kevin Adams, and I'm not going to say that I'm not saying that he should be fired, by the way. I'm just asking the question if he appears comfortable. Because to me, being outside of the building and just watching things and listening to things, kind of notice maybe there's some comfortability there. And you got to remember too, this was a multi-year plan, building it up from scratch when he took the job. But the regression that the team had last year and he didn't do anything about it is the problem. And maybe the corrective action that he took today with taking kind of reshaping that bottom six, and I'm putting Zucker in the bottom six, okay, is maybe it'll be enough. Maybe it will be enough.
It might. You're going to need Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck and Dylan Cousins to be who they were. You're going to need J.J. Peterka to not have any sort of regression and probably take another step forward. You're going to need Jack Quinn to stay healthy. You're going to need a much better year out of Owen Power. You're going to need Bo Byram to take the next step and be better than he was to finish the year. Dahlin is Dahlin. I think he's fine. He's outstanding. You're going to need Samuelson probably to stay healthy, right? Or some version of it. He's not going to play 82 games, but there's a lot. But those are all the bets that Kevin Adams already made. So I can almost understand him sitting there and saying, this is my core. This is, the guys I have placed my bets on. Some of these guys already have the long-term contracts. And, I think that's a fair point by Jim Campbell here. Zucker feels like spending money to spend money a little bit. Like,
I didn't mean to put this one up about Stan Bowman, but actually Stan Bowman is probably going. Jonathan Howe, I'll just read it now since it's on the screen. If Terry had any care for this team, Stan Bowman will be named president tomorrow. There's obviously problems that come with Stan Bowman, but Stan Bowman's being talked about in league circles about he's going to resurface. He's going to get a job again, probably.
Well,
pretty soon.
All those guys are now eligible. You saw that today.
Yeah.
They snuck that in there in the middle of free agency. Slimy little move by the NHL.
There's chat with like Edmonton's job, right, and things like that. You're gonna hear.
But it comes back to the same question of, how comfortable is Kevin Adams and where is Terry Pegula at? Is he? Because let's not forget, Lindy Ruff is getting paid by the Devils still for a couple of years. So we don't actually know exactly what he's getting paid by the Sabres, but it's not the full freight. So, Don Granato is also getting paid by the Sabres. So there is that. But, is he going to pay another GM or a president of hockey ops, rebuild the front office in a different vision? If you don't spend to the cap this year, after buying out Jeff Skinner, after being in the bottom five in spending every year since Terry Pegula said that they wanted to be economic, efficient, and effective, then you deserve whatever criticism gets lobbed at them about spending, frankly, because you are in win now situation. You are in a competitive window. They think they are. So, I think that's where I agree with you. You don't spend money just to spend money. And some of the contracts that were handed out today undoubtedly teams will regret them. But there's a reason that very few teams who make the playoffs spend at the level that the Sabres have over the last few years.
Teams in the division got better today.
I can't remember if I've made this comment before, but I would be curious to do the math on Don Granato's points per dollar spent over the last 3 years while he was the head coach. Probably ranks okay, frankly. Like, it's probably not terrible.
Yeah, let's do that math. Next Baker Fairburn hockey show.
I'd have to do it around the league. I'd be curious to see where it stands. But point being, this is a league where everybody's been up against the cap. Everybody's like celebrating a $4 million increase like they just won the lottery. And the Sabres have been sitting there with just sitting on piles of cash.
They've had their own cap.
So
are they sitting on piles of cash? That's the thing. Ticket revenue hasn't been there. I don't know if they're sitting on cash. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. But
And that's the
So
other thing too. He needs to make a move, by the way. Lindy's not going to be enough to sell tickets. That's my prediction. Fans are happy. I think there's a different vibe in the chat tonight. I think the energy that got injected into the lineup with Lafferty, Malenstein, Obey-Kubel. I think Zucker, I think the vibe that I'm feeling from the fans, I could be wrong, is that price tag was a lot, but at the same time, we'll take him if he helps. That's what's weird about this. Like the guys that they paid what? So Lafferty got 2 years, $2 million. Obey-Kubel was 1 for 1.5. Mal said we don't know yet, right? Not going to break the bank though. These are exciting acquisitions for this team right now.
Look at what Nashville did today.
Jeez, man, dude. Yeah.
I mean, the good news, I guess, is that Montreal kind of struck out. They didn't really get better. Detroit didn't have a great.
No, Detroit didn't.
Detroit had kind of a tough day, but Boston added a couple big pieces. Tampa aggressively tried to, reshape what they look like. Florida should be fine, right? I mean, they've got their big pieces.
Although the Lamborghini, he went back
$2
up to
million a
Alberta.
year.
Yeah, man.
$2 million a year. Good for him. He got the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show bump, I think.
Yeah.
His agent was
he
probably.
He can buy some shoes. Wasn't he walking around in the cup?
And just his briefs. Yeah. Imagine some of these phone calls this morning, by the way, like Brandon Montour gets 7x7.
Yeah.
Lomberg gets 2x2. Like, were these guys even awake yet? They had their parade yesterday.
Yeah. Ackman Larson. Yeah. Stolars. They lost
partying all week.
Guys there, right?
Yeah. And
well,
and then they get the call this morning. I get that. That solves your hangover pretty quick if you're Brandon Montour. $50 million contract.
I would have just kept going.
That's not
Bartender.
a bad.
Yeah. Joe Boo needs a refill.
That's not a bad situation, but yeah. So we'll see.
Right, dude. Yeah,
we'll
see
what
over the hour.
We'll see what happens. If they have another move up their sleeve, that would probably be for the best. But otherwise, they've got a grittier lineup. Is it a drastically better lineup than the one they had 12 months ago? We'll see. And we'll see how it stacks up in one of the toughest, maybe the toughest division in hockey. So that's sort of where I'm at with this right now. Is I guess we'll see. And look, each move is Kevin Adams' resume, right? So if he is content leaving the office with this roster, I don't envision he would be content with it going into training camp, but I guess we'll see.
All right, Matthew, one final opportunity. You got any plugs before we head out for the evening?
I think we've still got the $1 a month sale happening at theathletic.com.
Right.
So you can head over there and get that. And as always, like the video, comment on the video. Comment on the video the one player you would like to see added to the Sabres lineup. Actually, no. Yeah, let's do that. What are they missing? If you could add one more player. And as always, find us on Apple and rate us, subscribe, 5 stars, whatever it is you can do to help the algorithm. We always appreciate it.
All right, I'll see you down at the rink one of these days this week, maybe tomorrow. And for everyone else, we'll see you again very soon here on the next episode of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. Thanks, everyone, for hopping in tonight. For Matthew Fairburn for The Athletic, for the production crew who is helping me move furniture out of my house today, I'm Chris Baker. We'll see you again next time.